Hey guys, it's Todd from Cryptid Creatures. Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? If so, you got to use Anchor. That's Anchor. The cool thing about Anchor is it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money on your podcast. The more people that listen, the more money you can make. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Todd.
And I'm Brian.
Brian, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, man.
We are pumped this episode. We have our first guest on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We have Adam on the show. Adam, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, boys. How's things going today?
It's going great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. We got great weather and getting ready to get into some good conversation with you guys.
Right on. We're excited, man. We are so excited to have you on the show. We appreciate you coming on.
No problem. My pleasure.
Adam, I know you a little bit through work, and Brian really doesn't know you at all, but the reason we're having you come on is I know that you've had an encounter back in the day, so we wanted to talk about that. But tell us a little bit about your history, your background. Where do you come from? Where do you live? You're out in the Pacific Northwest, right?
That's right. I'm over in Eastern Oregon, kind of equal parts of three little towns, Baker, LeGrand, and Pendleton. Kind of been all around Eastern Oregon. My dad grew up timber worker, so we just kind of moved around wherever the mills were open.
Gotcha. So growing up as a kid, did you ever believe in Bigfoot or know Bigfoot or know anybody that said that they'd seen a Bigfoot?
Well, we all talked about Bigfoot when we were up camping and stuff like that. And I went through the whole Cub Scout and Boy Scout thing, and you get a few stories up and around the fire. But as far as like anybody who'd ever seen one, I didn't know anybody who had ever seen a Bigfoot at the time.
Mm-hmm. So at the time, how old were you when you had your encounter?
I was 12.
You were 12. Okay.
Wow. Young.
So yeah. Before that though, you didn't really give much thought about it. You kind of thought like maybe everybody else did at 12 years old. You kind of heard about it. Maybe you saw the Patterson film, but you didn't really know if it was real or not. I don't know. Where are you coming from on that?
Well, when I was a kid, I was pretty fearless about the woods. I just was always like, I'd get up and walk away from the fire, and I'd go stay in the tent. I didn't have any problems with that. It never even crossed my mind. And then we ended up going on a camping trip. My sister's boyfriend at the time was a senior in high school. He took us up camping, and me and my best friend Tom ended up going hiking. And that's when we had the encounter, and then it just got weird from there.
Okay. So where were you guys when you had this encounter? Tell us what kind of part of the state you were in.
So it was right after school was out. So we're talking June, and we were up at Anthony Lakes, which is a ski resort over on the east side of the state in Oregon.
Okay. I've heard of that. I think I know where that's at. Brian, have you heard of Anthony Lake before?
No.
What kind of mountain range is that close? Is it close to a mountain range, Adam?
Sure.
Or is it?
Yeah, it's up in the Elkhorn Mountains. And they're like pretty jagged, kind of Alps-looking peaks. Mm-hmm. A lot of alpine backwood skiing type stuff. Helicopter skiing is big up there. So it's pretty big country, but they have a really, really good hiking system up there for trails and a bunch of high lakes for fishing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of... you said elk something. You had mentioned to me the other day on the phone, we were talking about doing this episode, and you'd said you'd seen a moose. You were traveling and saw a moose somewhere. Where'd you see a moose at?
Yeah, we last weekend we took a huge trip. We put like 2,200 miles in back roads of Idaho, Montana, Washington, and we were just looking for a moose. That was the whole thing. I was destined to see a moose in the wild. I'd been to Glacier, Yellowstone, and Teton in my life, and I've yet to see a moose in the wild. So we were going to find a moose, and we took off. So we headed up through the middle of the east side of Washington, across the middle of Idaho, and then came in the bottom of Montana. No moose. The next day we get up, we drive down to see how far we can get into Yellowstone because it's not open yet. And luckily they had one loop open that was about a 50-mile drive you can take, and then you have to turn around and come back. So we were on our way back. We'd already seen all the buffalo and all the elk and wolves and coyotes and all the stuff that you see there. And there was a bunch of cars on this corner. And I slowed down for a second. I asked my wife, I was like, what are they looking at? And she goes, it's a moose. And I just locked them up and like just pulled in right there. And you're not supposed to get out of the car, so I don't condone that. But I did get out of the car and went back and checked out the moose, and it was everything I'd hoped it to be. It was literally like a religious thing. I built this thing up, brought tears to my eyes. I'm not kidding. I felt so weird about it, but like it's been so long that I've been trying to find this thing.
Yeah, that'd have been amazing.
Seeing it. Go ahead, Brian.
That would have been amazing.
You guys.
Yeah.
Seeing a creature that big just is awestruck. Got to be, just awesome. Just strike you as, that way. Just majestic and be like, holy, I've never seen a moose before. Brian, have you ever seen one before?
No, not in Indiana.
But you did spend some time in the East Coast, did you not? Or up in Maine or something like that, Brian?
No. I was down in Jersey.
Okay.
I think moose on the highway is like the number one cause of death in Maine.
It probably is.
Yeah.
That and bad clam chowder.
I'm pretty sure that if you bathe in bear pee is how you stay safe.
Is how you
they won't come around you.
Okay.
So I mean, other than you have to smell like bear pee.
So let's start talking about your encounter, Adam. Brian, before we get going here, you have any questions for Adam about this one?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
I'm just excited to hear it.
Yeah, and we may interject if you don't mind from here and there, but maybe start off and say, okay, what was going on leading up to it, and what happened, before everything. Give us a preliminary kind of lead up to it, and then kind of build up. Give us the climax, and then what happened afterwards. How did you react? How was your life affected afterwards? And just kind of tell us how you want to tell us a story.
Okay, well, obviously we're talking 1988, summer of 88. So there wasn't a whole lot of like finding Bigfoot shows or anything like that. That didn't really exist. There was a couple Bigfoot books that you could check out in the library at school, but it wasn't anything like we see now. So we decided that we're going camping, the three of us. Me, Tom, and Mike. Mike is my sister's boyfriend. Tom's his little brother and my best friend growing up. So we all jump in his old AMC Eagle, which was like a kind of a Jeep Cherokee / station wagon combo.
Was it
thing.
red?
No, it was white with a wood panel on the side.
Awesome. Even better.
So we head up there and we get our camping spot and we put our stuff together and, make a pretty good thing. Mike has his tent. Me and Tom have our own tent. We make a fire, get everything all ready to go, and stay the first night. First night's good to go. We make, hot dogs and s'mores and just live it up like, like three guys that are away from grown-ups.
So now,
except for Mike was the grown-up.
Were you in a campground, or did you guys? How were you camping? Were you just like freestyle camping, kind of out in the wilderness, or what?
The first night we're just in a campground.
Okay.
So we get up the next day, and Mike had to work. He worked at Pietro's Pizza, which is kind of a Pacific Northwest pizza chain. Mm-hmm. So he had to work at Pietro's. So he said he was going to run down the mountain, and it's about, 25, 30 minutes from Anthony Lakes back to Baker. So, and then after he got off work, he was going to come back up.
And that's where you lived at the time?
Right.
Baker.
So we, it's Baker City now, but it was It was just Baker at the time. They added city when they made it like an Old West touristy trap place. And then, so we decided we're going to go hiking while Mike goes to work. So we take off on this trail. We were heading up to Lost Lake, which was a trail that their family had been on a bunch of times. They go up there a couple times a year to camp. It wasn't that big of a deal. It's not a super hard. I mean, we're talking, it's maybe 6.5 mile hike with 1,500 to maybe 2,000 foot elevation gain over that whole time. Very well groomed trail. So we brought a stupid little Daisy Model 742 pellet gun with us. I mean, just to screw around with. I mean, not, you know. And so we had this thing, and we're taking turns like picking out stuff to shoot. Like, hey, see if you can hit that, and then whatever, like a flower or a squirrel or something. You know, it was a different time, so you know, it was just a couple kids killing small animals.
Sure.
So we're walking along this trail. Everything is good. And then the weirdest thing, like we both stopped, and I looked at him and I go, "Why'd you stop?" And he's like, "I feel like somebody's watching us." And I was like, "Me too." So we're kind of on guard. We keep walking up the trail. Everything's fine for a little bit. Kind of goes away. We get up toward the I guess it would be like the granite line, you know, where you start to leave, you're kind of scrub timber and you start to get up into the rocks.
Okay.
And we start getting up there, and same thing. We stop. Both of us get like the hairs on the back of our necks up, and
Can you explain that?
Hill.
Is there any way you can explain that? I mean, I know what people say, like someone's watching you, but what was it that made you? I mean, you didn't see anybody, you didn't see anything.
So right. So we just so it's just imagine like
instinct?
you're walking along, and some force tells you to stop and look around. I mean, I'm sure you get like intuition or whatever, but it stops, and then all of a sudden you kind of start looking around. And your breathing kind of changes a little bit, maybe, and you know, it shortens up, and you start getting that kind of cold feeling on the back of your neck, and so we're sitting there, you know,
the hair stands up.
The hair stands up. You get the goose pimples on your forearms, and so we start scanning, and both of us are like, we're sure that someone is following us. Like we're 100%. We're already starting to talk about it. Like, hey, is someone back there? What's going on?
Could you hear something?
Did you hear
at the time?
that? What?
Could you hear something at the time too, or?
You know, like very once in a while, we would hear something that sounded like maybe a footstep or like a twig breaking and stuff like that. But you know, of course, we're at this point we're kind of on high alert because we just got freaked out like 20 minutes earlier with the same type deal, and then everything's back. So we decide that we're gonna, like, there's a place where it has these switchbacks right below Hoffer Lake up there. There's some switchbacks, and so we decide that we're, like every other time we'd ever been there, we're just gonna cut straight up. You know, in fact there is a trail that people have, you know, if the people that are gung-ho that don't want to walk all the way around, you can just kind of cut a bunch of the trail off by just taking going straight up the hill. So we start going up the hill, and we get to this place where like the granite overlaps more granite, and there's like a tucked in dark area, which you could call it like a cave with not a roof. I mean, so it's like it's like a ledge, but if you were looking right at the mountain, you could hide behind it. There's nothing there that would tell you that anything was there. It's completely blocked from the trail. You have to walk up and look back down if you want to see behind those rocks. If you're looking right at it, it looks like a flat wall of granite, basically. So there's kind of a illusion there that there's nothing. And so we start walking around this thing, and it stinks. Like, it full on just smells like a rotting animal. And so then, you know, we're looking around for a rotted animal or something like that.
How bad was the smell on 1 to 10? I mean, was it severe?
It was like 7. Like, just kind of like it's a smell that makes you just kind of wrinkle up your nose and go, man, that, yuck. It kind of makes your mouth water a little bit. So you're just like, it was unpleasant, but I mean, it wasn't like rotted flesh or anything like that. It was, I'd say, semi-pungent, I guess, if that's a word. And so, so we get there and we get to that spot, and then the smell kind of adds to the whole mystique of the thing. And then we're really we start looking up on the hillside, and right as we look up, there's like some scrub timber up top, like another layer of timber. And clearly this thing walks between the two. A big step, and it was one big large step in between a big set of trees, and then it was gone then it was gone into the woods on the other side. Me and Tom both saw it. We both acknowledged it, and without saying a word, we both looped around and headed straight down the mountain, like trucking down this mountain. Not talking about it, not going, what was that? It was instant, like time to go. And I will tell you, I have watched all the Bigfoot shows that are out there now. And when they do the town hall meetings, when they go talk to all those people, the people that say, all I wanted to do was get away from it, those are the people I'm like, that was a person that had a real encounter. The people that are like, I thought I saw it go behind a tree, so I chased it. That is not the feeling you get.
Right.
That's not how it works.
You're not going to follow this thing, huh?
We both bailed, and we get about, I don't know, maybe a mile back down the trail, and we kind of compose ourselves and decide that we're going to kind of talk about what just happened. And so we have a little powwow about, what'd you see? What'd you see? And they're like, yeah, like, and we're like, that wasn't a person, right? And they're like, no. We're like, that wasn't a bear, right? So we get back to camp, and Mike's not back from work yet. So, and it's starting to get dark. And so he's 13, I'm 12. We're in full freak out mode. So we start putting logs on the fire because, fire is going to keep whatever away. And we felt like whatever was out there followed us back. And so we had this fire that was just absolutely massive to keep everything away. And Mike doesn't show back up. Like, he's nowhere to be found. So we're in full freak out mode, and there is there was 2 people in all of Eastern Oregon that had cell phones, and they carried them around in a bag, So there was no cell phones. We're not calling for help or anything. So we decide that, we've done everything we can do, and, we've done the basically hold your eyelids open type deal. It's probably 1, 2 in the morning, and we decide that we got to go to bed. So, we got threw all the wood on the fire so it would be bright as can be. We went in, zipped up the tent like anything's going to be stopped by a nylon tent that wants to reach in and grab you, But at the time, it seemed like our only logical thing. So somehow we fall asleep. So we wake up, and Mike's there. He's in his tent. And he had went and hung out with my sister, and fell asleep at my parents' house, and then realized that he basically forgot about us, and he jumped in his car, and he'd gotten back to camp about 3 a.m. And nice. So he goes, he's like, hey, what did you guys do why'd you guys make the fire like that? And we're like, what are you talking about? He's like, when I got here, your fire was completely spread out all over here. And I was wondering what the hell? And so we start looking, and the logs that we'd put on the fire were like 10 feet away from the fire pit. Like something had went through and kicked our fire to pieces to make it dark.
Oh my gosh.
It was insane. And so,
Adam,
let's go ahead.
Before you go on, can you tell us what did you, I mean, explain what you saw. What describe it? Was it a Bigfoot? Was it
So basically, we're talking like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, backlit sun looking up the mountain, and it was a biped, as we like to say. And it didn't look like it had clothes on. It looked like it was a natural, furred animal, but took one giant step like a person.
Did you get a look at the face at all?
No, because it was backlit. The sun was at its back. We're talking up the hill quite a ways. Not like, I'm not talking 1,000 yards or anything, but I'm talking it was up there probably, 300 yards from us, but in far enough that that it wasn't right on us, but close enough that we didn't want to be around it.
Mm-hmm. They say up there in the Pacific Northwest that the Bigfoot get really big. Could you tell how big this one was?
No, it's funny that you say that, is because we've thought about going back up and trying to figure out exactly where things were as far as like you see it in all the different shows, they're like, it was high as this branch and all this stuff. And I don't think that, I don't have that frame of reference, especially now that we're talking, 33 years later. Right. But I will say that it felt larger than a person. There was no doubt in either of our minds that it wasn't a person. We 100% agreed on that. Here's another side note with this whole story is my buddy Tom went in the Marines, and then he took off and he went to the Persian Gulf and he did the Desert Shield and he did all of his stuff. He came back and we were in our early 20s by this time. I had told my friends here in Pendleton, where I live now, that my buddy Tom was going to come visit, and he was the guy that I had the Bigfoot sighting with. And I tell them, they're like, "Oh, what Bigfoot?" So I'm telling them the story, much like I'm telling you guys the story. Mm-hmm. And Tom gets there, and he lives in Washington, D.C. now, works for Naval Records. He went into the Marines when I went to college, and I thought he was silly at the time, but now we're the same age, and he's already retired, so I was obviously the silly one. But so he gets there. My buddy's like, "Hey, tell us about the Bigfoot story." So Tom tells him the Bigfoot story, and my buddy Justin goes, "Do you know why I believe this story?" He goes, "Because I just heard this story from Adam a week ago, and you just told it verbatim, exactly the way that he told it, and there wasn't any changes, and you guys haven't talked about it in 10 years."
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that proves validity, to you guys' stories, and I'm sure if we got Tom on here, he would tell the story just as he did with you too. So, I mean, that's cool. The weird thing is you said were you 300 yards? You think you were 300 yards away, or were you closer than that?
I was probably, I'm guessing. I'm just guessing because things are, when you're talking vertical feet, and you're looking up a hill, that's why I hate to put a size on it.
What was the key factor that immediately made you realize that this wasn't a person?
What made me think it wasn't a person? Just the way that it, as we looked up and kind of both of us realized that something was standing there, the outline of the shape didn't look like a person at first. And so both of us thought it was an animal of some kind. And then when it turned its body and took one big step across, and it cleared so much area. I mean, even in, like, I'm just picturing it right now in my mind, how far, like, the step was. It didn't make sense. It didn't move like any other person that I had seen or have seen since. Like, even when I picture it back in my mind, it doesn't, people move a certain way, and it didn't move like that.
Right.
So
did it have like really long arms?
it did. It was like all we could make out was like one arm, and it kind of looked like it kind of just like swung it behind itself as it started to go. Like it was just giving itself like a little push off to get itself going. So that was the only thing that I felt that maybe there was a longer arm there, but like I said, to this day, the way I can explain it is it was more a feeling, and the way that it all played out, like the way it played out, rather than like a photograph. Like it's not like there's a definitive visual proof of this type deal, but when you start doing all the things that led up to it and where we were and what we saw at the time, it just fits so well. It's just like deductive reasoning, basically.
How long?
Unfortunately, it sounds crazy that deductive reasoning led me to Bigfoot, I guess.
No,
now I'm saying it out loud. It does sound
right,
stupid.
Right place, right time. That's the only way it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had talked about that before.
Yeah. How long do you think this thing was following you, or
I think it had
before you saw
spotted us. I think it had spotted us down at like I'd say probably a mile and a half before. There's like a flat area as you're walking along. It's a real gradual incline, and so you ascent. And then once we got up into the tighter trail and tighter trees, I think it kind of retreated back away from us. And what I think is when we stopped and we got off the trail and kind of moved a little bit, I think we changed its vantage point of where it was looking at us and kind of turned the tides on it. Okay. But, I mean, this is all 100% speculation on how it works, but I also think that there's something to be said about, they seem to reveal themselves or like almost have a feeling of a safety factor type deal, like who they can reveal themselves to. So, in my mind, the way that I kind of explain it to people is you go out in the woods during the summer on a normal weekend or something, and you see all kinds of deer running around. No problem. Then deer season comes along, and there's no deer to be found. You just don't see them.
Yeah, that's true.
So something has triggered their intuition that they have to be on high alert during this time period, right? And so, or just like the new activity in the way people, or they feel like they're being stopped, because obviously animals' intuitions and all their instincts are so much more refined than humans. It's insane. But I think Bigfoot lives his existence with that radar on. They're always on high alert.
Yeah. I've always said if a Bigfoot's going to know you're within 2 miles of it before you even know. I mean, you're never going to. The only way you're going to surprise a Bigfoot is just by the encounters where guys are just happen to be camouflaged and they're downwind and it's just right, and Bigfoot doesn't realize it. But for the most part, I think a Bigfoot's going to know you're within 2 to 5 miles of it before you even get that. Once you get that close, you're never going. I mean. Do you think the one that you saw was the same one that was tracking you guys or following you guys? Is that what happened?
I do. Here's another side note. So after we get through this, all this, and we're adults again, and the BFRO does their thing, and they put out their website and all this stuff, and you can go and you can track Bigfoot sightings by every state. and you can by county and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So we go to the BFRO site, and there is quite a few Squatch sightings in that area in the late 90s or late 80s.
Okay. Interesting.
So it might have been like somewhat of a hot spot, but there's one that a lady had spotted a Sasquatch in a field at the bottom of the Anthony Lakes Hill before you start heading up on the road. That was like crossing a fence, that basically had stepped over a fence, and she had seen it. And this was within like months of our sighting. And we're talking overland a couple miles, maybe 5 miles by the road, but as the crow flies, maybe just a couple miles.
Yeah. I tell you what, I think I've always said this too, and then you're never, Brian, you know, I talked about this. You can look up sightings, and I do use the BFRO all the time.
Yeah.
But you can't really go to a place where there's been a sighting and expect to see a Bigfoot. I think, Brian, you made the comment, you think they migrate a lot, or they, you know, there's migration periods, but they may not come back to the same areas all the time. Maybe if they've seen enough people, maybe they decide to stay away from that area, and maybe that's what happened there. But you never know. Adam, would you go back to that place?
I would, actually. You know, I've thought about doing that on several occasions, going back, and it would just have to be the right set of experience, you know, like just to go back if I had the right people with me that were really interested in wanting to look around and explore. But as far as just going back as a camping trip,
if I get out there again, we are going.
Okay. Well, it would be my pleasure to take you guys up there. But
yeah, definitely would be cool.
I think, as of the way I think of it, is it's still a little freaky for me to think about going up there. You know.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, it's that's the other thing is when I hear of people talking about their experiences, there's such a definite feeling in my brain of what I saw and what it was. And it's really weird when you hear the people that are like, yeah, it was a Bigfoot. It couldn't be anything else. And those are also people that I give a lot of the credit to, you know, and it's like in my mind, like I've worked through everything and I can't think of what else it could be. You know, I don't believe it was a person up there hiding in the trees waiting for us to make eye contact with it for it to move, you know, that kind of thing. I think it was something that basically it was like when you, let's say if you walk up on a rabbit and it's hiding underneath something and it lets you get so close and then it just can't take it anymore and it has to bolt. That's the way I felt like this was, but it was at a much farther distance. They get that feeling way before like a rabbit does.
Yeah, they're not going to walk right up on top of them unless they want you to.
Right, that's not going to happen. That's the way that I think that's why they're so elusive. They can be so elusive. And the other thing is I don't think that they move a lot. You know, I don't think they take off and get a lot of distance. I think that they know how to circle back, and they do a lot of moving around you, and it's kind of ships in the night. You go this way and they go that way. And when you're moving one way, they're moving the opposite way. And I think they're masters of that. And that's how they have remained so elusive.
Yeah.
So when you saw this thing before that, you didn't really believe or not really know. But can you say after you guys saw it and after you had that encounter, you definitely believed that Bigfoot existed?
Yes. 100%. I absolutely got immersed in it for probably a decade, where I was looking up every book I could get, and I took all the anthropology classes I could take in college. I absolutely was, I wouldn't say obsessed to that point, but I mean, it was my number one research item. You know, if I was going to look up something, oh man, the first few years of the internet, I tore the internet up with that kind of stuff. You know, I'm talking about the old dial-up days.
Yeah.
So, Yeah. Oh, just looking for any
Search
kind of
history,
little things.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just like everything. Just looking up. I've looked up a bunch of the hoax. I mean, all the different hoaxes have been gone. And I'm a road tripper. I love to drive. I've been down and checked out the Sasquatch carvings down in California, and of course all the different any of these places that have like exhibits, and I have to believe it just seems like there's too many things for it not to exist. I mean, anything's. I mean, as much there's people that I'm sure that are so far against it is they don't believe as much as I do believe. So, but I am. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: talk about how it affected you after you saw it. I know you still mushroom hunt to this day, and talk about would you want to see one again, or is that you said you got really full inflamed into it and stuff? So, would you want to see one again, and how did it affect you? After you did see it, did you hide out in your bedroom for months on end, or were you like, hey, I want to go see another one, or what?
But I will tell you, for a few years up at elk and deer camp, if my dad was going to go take a pee, I was about 5 feet behind him. So he wasn't getting far away.
I was just going to ask you if that ever was in the back of your head while you were out in the woods.
Oh, yeah. And then we go mushroom hunting now quite a bit, and I'm always, on high alert. My wife doesn't believe in weapons, which is fine, but I grew up in a gun house, that's my dad bought and sold guns, and we always had guns around, but I'm okay with not having a gun. So when I'm in the woods, I usually just have my knife on my hip, and a lot of the times I carry an axe just because I love throwing axes. That's one of my favorite things to do. So when she's looking for mushrooms, I'm throwing axe a lot. Right. But I am always really aware of everything. It drives her nuts because I look in the trees and stuff like that, and she doesn't want me to look up. But I'm like, hey, this is where the cougars are resting while we're walking around. So I'm not just looking straight ahead. I also look up, because where we mushroom hunt is a total cougar den. We're always finding fresh kills in there and stuff, but there's tons of mushrooms, and so I'm like, it's
that's
totally
well fertilized, right?
Yeah. So, I've always had like this crazy dream of having some hand-to-hand combat, like me and my pocket knife versus a cougar. I think it would make a pretty sweet story. But 2 years ago on our first mushroom hunt, we were walking through, and my wife's like, you need to get me bear spray. And I was like, you don't need bear spray. And she's like, why? I was like, because bears want nothing to do with you. The bears around here, they smell you coming and they're gone. Right? And you know how the universe likes when you say stuff to your wife, and then it likes to just kick you in the nuts
right.
Second. Yep. So I say this with confidence, like I know what I'm talking about. She literally walks over this tree that's maybe 2 foot diameter. It's not that big of a tree. And I'm going around the tree because I didn't want to step over it. And she jumps a freaking bear cub.
Oh,
and
no.
it comes out of this hole and takes off.
Oh, no.
And so she's freaking out. But then I'm also trying to get her reeled in because we're talking early spring. So I'm like, hey, there's probably a mama here. And that's when you get in trouble with bears, is when you get between them and their cubs. So I was like, hey, now we got to try to figure out how to get out of this. And, of course, we're in the cougar death den. So I was like, all right, this is we got to figure out a way out of here where we're not crossing the path of where that bear was headed, because he was probably heading back to his mama. So we ended up backing out of there, and we've we go back quite a bit later in the season now, not as early, but there's bear scat in that area every time we go in, massive amounts of it. So I did buy her the bear spray the next year.
Yeah.
No. So you're not afraid to go back. I don't think you're afraid to go back in the woods for any reason, and it doesn't sound like you're worried about seeing another Bigfoot. But do you think you'd like to see one again?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would. I mean, and and the thing is I've thought about that 1,000 times. Like, I don't know if you guys have talked about it on this show or not, but I don't hunt anymore. But the old debate, like, have you guys talked about it? Like, if you're out hunting and you eyeball one, what do? Do
you shoot it or
it off in your head, say, right, I knew it, it exists, or do you take the shot so the rest of the world can check it off their list?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've always said I don't need to know. I don't need the government or 100% proof, because for one, I don't think that there's ever going to. I think the government covers it up. For one, I think there's a big government cover up here. I don't think we're ever going to know. But I just want to see one for myself, and then I can say, I don't care what people say or don't say. I know they exist.
I think the only way I would take that shot is if my life was in danger. Otherwise, I would just let it go.
Yeah.
Now, would I love to be the guy that brings home a Bigfoot head and proves to the world that Bigfoot exists? Oh. Hell yeah, I would. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the government or some agency would step in before. Now, you'd have to be pretty damn sneaky about it. You'd have to be good at doing what you're doing.
Like Jacques Lafleur.
I don't even know if you killed a Bigfoot, if you'd be able to even remove a finger, let alone its head before.
Yeah, you'd have to be able to.
The other ones would jump in, and
body parts.
The other ones would jump in. His buddies would jump in and take care of you, probably. So there's probably always. I always say there's always more than one, but you never know.
I don't know. I feel like they have to be fairly solo. Like we do get in a situation in a lot of these areas, especially in the Pacific Northwest and all these areas that are so barren, there's too many wide open spaces where a group couldn't like go around the whole outside of a meadow or something like that. I feel like it's one of these situations like these like sand cats that are in like Egypt and stuff, and they'll go years without seeing one of these cats. Mm-hmm. And the cats only breed like once in their life because they might not see another sand cat ever. But there's not enough food in a one certain area to sustain more than one. Mm-hmm. So they have to travel, since we're talking Egypt, they got to travel a bunch of kilometers before they even come in contact with another one to breed with. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was thinking, is that these things probably have breeding cycles and they don't even come together, or like it's almost like a spawning intuition, and they go to a place and meet that they don't even know why they're going there. Mm-hmm. They're just following the pheromones to this one place so they can breed.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I never thought about that.
So what do you think, like right now, my theory is that the hot spot, if someone's going to get a Bigfoot, like right now, if someone's going to get photographs of a Bigfoot, or if they're going to get scientific proof they exist, I'm saying Eastern Russia is the place, is the last real wild where you could maybe still get one that has been in a remote area so long that they might not have the hide and go seek gene that the American Bigfoots have gotten from us, like basically littering the world with our footprints.
That's interesting you say that.
Do you have Amazon? Do you have Amazon Video, Amazon Prime?
I do.
Did you see that new documentary?
Bigfoot Among Wild Men, Adam. If you haven't watched that, watch that one.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, watch that one.
It's got Jeff Meldrum on it, and it's some really good. Yeah, you got
really good footage of Eastern Russia.
Yeah. Or Brian, you were just talking about that the other day. You're just like, we need to go to Russia. We need to go to Russia.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeff Meldrum's a pretty decent guy. And, you know, he's one of the guys that I really respect on the fact that he's just like, hey, I'm just all in with it. You know, this is what I believe. You can call me crazy if you want, but I've done the research, and I think this is something that's real. And he's not, you know, he doesn't apologize for it. And I really like those ones, the people that have a scientific mind and they're unapologetic.
Yeah, he is super smart too.
Yeah, he's respectable for sure.
Yeah,
you got to respect that guy's things.
Oh, for sure.
Adam, I've talked to Brian, and we've done a couple episodes about what we think Bigfoot is, or we don't know what Bigfoot is. We haven't gotten to that point. We definitely want to bring you back on the show a couple more times and talk about more in depth about this. But do you think Bigfoot is just a raw blood and flesh and bone creature, or do you think there's more to it than that?
Okay. Are you talking about, like, do I think that it moves through the fairy realm, or
sure? Do you think it's alien?
Interdimensional?
Do you think it's man-made?
Interdimensional?
Do you think it's man-made or government-made? Do you think it's been around before man? What do you think the background of this thing is?
I think it's flesh and bone. I do. I think it's flesh and bone, and I think that it is so highly elusive, and it's been more and more elusive as we've gotten more intrusive into their area. Mm-hmm. I believe that the Native Americans and even down into Central America, I think they had a more working relationship with them. There's no reason that you can find a Bigfoot on a totem pole in Alaska and you can find the exact face carved in the side of a temple in, you know, central Peru.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, it just blows my mind that is out there. And when I say this, I'm not talking like similar, I'm talking identical, you know, and the more and more you look at, you're like, okay, hold on. This tribe has a creature that's identical to it in this tribe. And then if you go to Russia, they have these that looks like this. And you're like, these people would have never interacted. It's physically impossible for this. Even if it was a folk tale, there's no way that the people from Peru are sharing the folk tales with like the Iroquois, you know, in
especially
Michigan
1,000 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's not like they had planes or time travel to go, hey, guess what?
Right.
Unless they did, and then everything just got wiped clean, and we hit the reset button. But
that's another episode.
A whole different thing.
Yeah, that's a whole
episode.
That's a whole different theory.
We'll get you on and talk about that sometime too. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode there.
So, do you think these things have been around before humans?
Or simultaneously. I think after I've looked at a lot of the bone structure of the Neanderthals, or Neanderthal, I guess it depends on like when you went to school on how you say it now. But yeah. But I think we're looking at a cast off of some sort of like, not Homo sapien, obviously that's way too new, but I think evolution took a side trip, kind of like it did with the Neanderthals, and it went off into a wilder type beast and went back toward the gorilla type ape side of things. Do you guys know who Robert Ardrey is?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, he is a guy that basically said that humans didn't come from chimpanzee type in the progression, that we're a lot closer to coming from like mountain gorillas. Mm-hmm. And that's why we eat meat and we're more aggressive and all these different things. And a lot of our traits are more linked to being a gorilla than to a chimpanzee. So somewhere along the line, evolution took a side turn and ended up with this one-off creature that is highly intelligent, yet highly elusive. And I believe that's what we've gotten to. They've adapted to so many different kinds of terrains, and they're big-brained. That's one thing that I think everybody can agree with this, even if it's like a Gigantopithecus. The thing had a giant brain, so it can problem solve. And so that's what I think we're up against is a super intelligent primate, and it's very mobile, agile, and not as big as people think. I think that's what we're going to find out. If this ever gets proved, I think the people who have had encounters with them, it gets blown up out of proportion because they're freaked out. So the story gets bigger and the creature gets bigger as they go. I have a feeling that they're not much bigger than actual people.
Or maybe they're just over time are getting smaller in general. That could be true, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, as they evolve. Maybe they don't need to be as big as they actually are. Maybe as they evolve, they don't need to be 8 or 10 foot tall.
It makes sense for them to have the big, wide footprint because they're dense. And with the density, they have the extra weight. And then the fact that, I mean, right now, there's the least amount of snow on the planet that we've ever seen. But when evolution was, most of the planet was snow. So they would need them almost like snowshoes to get in between areas.
Right.
You know, it might be miles of snow travel. So they evolved with these gigantic snowshoe feet to spread out their weight because they're dense. But I don't think the size of the feet is relative to how tall they are.
Okay, gotcha. That's probably true too. I mean, who knows? I don't have one. I mean, how many times do you think somebody's killed one? Do you think people have killed these things?
Yes, I do. I think in the early, I want to say I'd have to go back and look at some of the stories, but when they caught one, they were pretty sure that they caught one. Now, I want to say back in like maybe the 1910s, early 20s, they thought they'd caught one and then it disappeared. But I think this was one of those situations where they caught it, somebody took it out and killed it, and for whatever reason, either they thought that it was going to attack them, they were afraid of it, or they thought that it was going to stop expansion, or it was going to, who knows? I mean, right. Back then, it's funny because now it's not that uncommon for people to just think everything is a lie from the government and the media. They don't even bat an eye that we're being lied to.
Right.
But back then, everybody took everything as truth. If it was in the newspaper, it was an absolute truth. If it came out of your granddaddy's mouth, it was an absolute truth.
Right.
So, who knows? They could have done anything, and they could have said for whatever reason, and everybody would have absolutely bought into it.
Well, that kind of leads me into my last question, and we can get this wrapped up here, guys. But why do you think that we haven't proven the Bigfoot existence? What's the main reason, Adam?
I think the main thing is going to have to be, unfortunately, I don't want to sound like everybody else on one of those shows, but I think that ritualistically, however they do it, however they dispose of their dead, is how we don't either. I can't even think of maybe even like if their bones are very flavorful to like porcupines or something like that. Bear skeletons are very hard to find in the wild.
Right.
That doesn't happen. You just don't find a bear skeleton.
Find a mountain lion carcass. Find a mountain lion skeleton in the wild.
Right.
You never will.
It's just so what makes those creatures, which mountain lions are insanely difficult to see in the wild. I mean, I've all the hours I've spent in the woods, and I've seen one in the wild, in the actual wild, and I've had one run across the road when I was driving, and that was it. That is it. Mm-hmm. And I live in the heart of it. There's people just blocks from me that have had them on their Ring cameras that have been in their yard. And
Crazy.
But nobody sees the thing. They're just looking back at their footage the next morning and go, "Oh crap, there was a cougar in our front yard."
That's scary.
So,
Yeah.
So until they figure that, until we can figure out how that we can get any sort of like evidence or anything, man, I don't know how they're so elusive. I mean, it's part of the mystery. I mean, I have no more insight on that than I don't think anybody, but,
right. I guess if we knew tomorrow that Bigfoot was real, then within a year or 2 years, it wouldn't be a big deal anymore, right? Oh yeah, I saw one. Yeah, oh yeah, I saw one too. Yeah, they got one on display now. It's like, yeah.
Pretty soon they would. Pretty soon we would name them.
It wouldn't even. It might be that kind of thing. It's like, so let's say you buy a silver Jetta, and you feel like you really like this car and it's something special to you. Then all of a sudden you start driving around town and you start realizing how many other silver Jettas there are.
Yeah.
So once people open up their minds to it and they're like, this is what it looks like and this is what I should look for, then who knows? Right. Just like mushroom hunting. When you're out looking for a morel, until you pick the first one and get your eyes trained to see them, they're impossible to find. And then all of a sudden, once you find the first one and you click that in your brain, you're like, oh, there's one over there and there's one over there. And then, oh, crap, I'm standing on one right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah. Sometimes the obvious is right in front of you and you don't even know, right?
Yeah. Well, we live everything with blinders on. I mean, you know how that works. I mean, everybody has their own blinders for whatever reason or anything. One of the things that I'm working on right now, in fact, and I worked on it this weekend on this trip to Montana, was I don't need a photograph from my phone to catalog everything I do over a trip. I'm like, nobody really cares. Like, if I come up and show you this picture of a moose, you're like, oh, cool, it's a moose. But that could be any picture on the internet in the world, and you wouldn't care at all. I mean, just the fact that I saw it with my eyes doesn't change anything for you. So why not put the phone down and absorb more of it with your own eyes?
Yeah.
So the memory is better for you.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to have a Bigfoot picture, I'm all about that. I'll be just as interested as I can be. Trust me.
Yeah. Make sure you have your camera. Yeah. Another one of those.
I'd have him take the picture of me, and I'd be like, no, dude. I was like, no, it was cool. I was like, Bigfoot used my phone
to take a picture of me.
It'd be like Chunk in Goonies. When he's like, like the time Michael Jackson used your bathroom. Like, it wasn't Michael Jackson. It was his sister. So.
That's a good movie. Well, man, we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was fun.
No, we got to get you back on and talk more about this for sure. Yeah. Talk about some theories, and maybe we can come up with some more ideas and get to the bottom of this. But we'd like to hear your input some more for sure. So we really appreciate you coming on and telling your story, man.
You could be our man out west.
Yeah, definitely.
Out west, when you guys come out west, I can't wait to take you guys out. It'll be fun.
Oh, we're definitely doing that for sure.
Heck yeah.
Right on. Brian, you got anything else for Adam before we cut him out of here?
Nope.
All right, man.
Just thanks for sharing. That was amazing.
All right.
We'll get this. Yeah.
Take care, you guys.
All right, Adam. Take care.
You too.